So this is absolutely thrilling news. I'm still struggling to process it, honestly. We are going to be getting more Avatar, a whole lot more Avatar. Brian Konietzko and Michael Dante DiMartino, the two men who almost 2 decades ago created this wonderful franchise, are back in the reins. They have creative control again. They've risen like a phoenix from the ashes of their acrimonious departure from Netflix's live action reboot of the original Avatar, The Last Airbender. They basically have a Kevin Feige like role at Nickelodeon now, tasked with expanding and elaborating on and growing the Avatar brand. So let's investigate why exactly this happened, what exactly it means, and why it's a lot for us as Avatar fans to look forward to. As you may remember, back in August of 2020, Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko announced that they were leaving the Netflix production of the Avatar reboot, and it was not on pleasant terms. By the standards of these sorts of civil announcements, Konietzko's and DiMartino's were pretty vicious. They talked about how they were trying to work with Netflix, trying to come to a compromise, and eventually decided that they were not comfortable with the direction Netflix was taking the show, so they decided they had to leave. They decided it was too miserable. And we all thought that would be the end. It was a very dark day. Netflix is still, as far as we know, planning to make that Avatar reboot, but it's in shambles now. They don't have any direction. They don't know exactly what's going on. It's possible the reboot will never be made. The newly announced Avatar Studios, however, is planning to take this franchise from just a couple of shows made about a couple decades ago into a cultural juggernaut that will be able to challenge the best of them. Basically what Disney has done with Marvel and Star Wars. In this maximalist era of streaming, it's not less is more, it's more is more. Everyone wants what Disney has, and understandably so. Disney's stock has just gone through the roof ever since they launched Disney Plus. And everyone wants a part of that, including Viacom CBS, the company that owns Nickelodeon, which of course owns Avatar. It's the perfect match. Viacom CBS wants to be able to compete with Disney to avoid being lost in the shuffle as the streaming wars accelerate, and Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko want more creative control. They want to be able to put their vision to the screen without being handicapped by the arbitrary obligations of corporate execs who are trying to force Avatar and Korra into very narrow ideas of what they wanted for the shows, especially Korra, which suffered immensely in the hands of Nickelodeon. To the extent that the fourth season of The Legend of Korra actually had to cut an episode and replace it with a recap episode because Nickelodeon cut their budget. So, considering all these factors, we know what is going on, and we know why, but we still are a little unsure as to what this is going to lead to. The first item on the list for Avatar Studios is the wonderful announcement that they are going to be making a animated movie in the Avatar universe. And that movie is going to be entering into production later this very year, 2021. Now, obviously, we shouldn't let ourselves get too excited. Animated films are a big production. It is going to take a very long time. We probably will not be getting this new animated Avatar movie for 2 years or so. And we honestly still have no idea what this Avatar movie is going to be about at this point, but it is nonetheless a very exciting opportunity. It's great to just be getting something new. That's a novel idea, something new. We're not just going to be getting old plot lines and old scenes and old nostalgia baiting like we probably would have been getting had the creators stayed on with Netflix and tried to create this reboot. The reboot might have been great, but it just would have been what we had already seen before. This is something new. This is something inventive and different. We're going to be getting new characters, new storylines, new adventures, new ideas about where to take this world. What are we going to be getting? I'm almost giddy to say that I don't know. We could be getting just about anything. Now, the thing I've seen most Avatar fans clamoring for, including on the polls I run on my YouTube channel, is a version of Avatar wherein all the members of Team Avatar are adults going on adult adventures. People want to see the characters they loved as kids grow up with them. And that is completely understandable, but I'm not entirely sure I want to see more of Aang's story directly. I mean, we've already gotten Aang's story. It's come to a very nice and very decisive conclusion. And honestly, even if that weren't the case, I'd still be a little uncertain about just trying to directly recapture the magic of the old Avatar. Even if it worked, I doubt fans would be particularly happy considering they are so attached to an idea of Avatar and an idea of these characters that really formed their childhoods and their adolescences. So even if the show is good, it wouldn't measure up to the images and ideas that fans have had of these characters and the connections fans have made with these characters over the last decade and a half. So I think they should do something new and different. Really get away from Aang, maybe even get away from Korra, and explore new stories. If you asked me what I think the movie's going to be about, I think it's going to be about Kyoshi. I don't have any firm evidence to support that, but it's likely, considering the release of those Kyoshi books in the last couple of years. We have a very complete and in-depth and very compelling story of this Avatar, and it would be wonderful to bring that to the television screen for all of us to see and wonder at. It'd be a great opportunity, and I think they'll take it. If not now, then certainly later. So what else are we going to be getting? It's hard to tell, but we are going to be getting a lot, and we should be prepared for that. We're going to get a full banquet of Avatar, and that's a wonderful thing. We could be getting side stories about characters in Avatar and Korra, just like we've been getting in the Avatar and Korra comics. We could be getting an entire series based around characters who were auxiliary to the original two shows. Imagine a whole show based around the Cabbage Man we see in Avatar. It could be like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, if you've read that. If you haven't read that, just think The Lion King 1.5. It's basically the same thing. But anyways, there are so many characters that are substantial enough to support an entire show based around them. Compare this to, say, Star Wars or even Marvel. It's not that I hate those franchises, I don't. I enjoy some things that come out of those franchises, but there aren't like 50 characters deep enough to base entire shows around. Whereas Avatar and Korra are shows that one could absolutely take a couple dozen characters and make shows for each of them. It's a very deep franchise, not just spiritually and philosophically, but in terms of just pure world-building muscle. There are a lot of people and a lot of storylines, and there's a lot of material to really clamp onto. They could make a whole show about Azula, for instance, or they could make shows about the early lives of the villains of The Legend of Korra. I would totally be willing to watch any of those shows. Or think about what happens to this world after the events of The Legend of Korra. What happens to Jinora and her siblings? What happens to the world after the events of The Legend of Korra? Decades and decades and decades after. What happens in the Avatar's equivalent of the 1980s? Do they have an equivalent for the 1980s? What happens in the modern day? What happens, say, in outer space? I personally would love to see a more explicitly science fiction Avatar series. Now, as a whole, I have very mixed feelings about this extremely maximalist approach to streaming TV. Do we really need to see a reboot of the Rugrats? No, I can assure you that we don't. But Avatar is different. This is a show with so much untapped potential. I hate to call our first two series just foundation or a groundwork because they are honestly some of the best television series ever made. If I made a list of the 10 best shows ever, animated or otherwise, I would put both Avatar and Korra on that list. But what I mean, if I were to call them a foundation, is that they give you the opportunity to build a lot of other shows and movies and just storylines and themes just based on what's already there. Just 6 months ago, it appeared that the franchise was going to spend another decade being squandered, just like what happened last decade with the M. Night Shyamalan 2010 movie that just butchered the prospects of Avatar really going mainstream. But the show kept building, it kept gaining momentum, and it eventually went mainstream anyway, at least among people my age and a little older. And network execs are paying attention. They have reacted accordingly. Now the show has a huge burst of vitality. Per deadline, we are going to be getting both animated series and movies based in this world. Even the name Avatar Studios evokes grandeur and majesty and ambition. It creates a desire to create one of the biggest, most expansive, most involving franchises of the new century. It might be a few years, but the Avatar brand is going to become huge so long as they create shows and movies with the same amount of care and dedication and thoughtfulness that made Avatar and Korra such grandiose populist successes. Avatar really feels like it's crossed a Rubicon with this announcement. Feels like it's become one of the dominant brands of today, not just another franchise, something that's on track to compete with Marvel and Star Wars and The Lord of the Rings, or even surpass those franchises. The president of Viacom CBS's Kids and Family division has said that the popularity of Avatar and Korra has exploded tenfold since the releases of those shows, and as someone who has built his entire channel on the foundation of Avatar and Korra, I have to say I can definitely see that explosion in popularity and critical acclaim. I never would have imagined that the show I caught glimpses of back in 2005, before I was even in kindergarten, would eventually become a mammoth, paradigm-defining franchise by the time I was in college. It's big enough to attract the interest of a mega corporation like Viacom CBS. I do not know what we are in for these next few years, but I can guarantee you that it's not going to be boring, and it's probably not going to be disappointing. We are in for a wild, wonderful, beautiful ride, y'all. The creators have said that there are so many stories and time periods in this Avatar world that they are ready to explore, and I am more than willing to say that I am very ready as well. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. It is a brilliant, evocative, beautiful, very clever show that is only getting better with time. It's becoming more acclaimed, and we're seeing more and more thoughtful and evocative things in it as time progresses. The show is only going to become more acclaimed as Avatar Studios really gets a rolling. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Thank y'all again. Adios, comrades.